This is another reason why false praise from one's parents is counterproductive.
It's devastating.
The parent doesn't have to be putting the child down all the time, but should not be falsely praising things that the kid is actually not good at.
I don't know if you can see this. Do you see the goosebumps I have right now?
Oh yeah. Oh yes, I do.
Do you know why? Do you know why I have this?
I know you love your mama.
Well, I love my mama the most, but let me say it from where you're going. I believe that 8th place trophies over the last 30 years have done more mental health damage. Do you understand that these kids, and I'm very fortunate, we hire so many kids right out of school. I have hundreds, 700-800 employees, maybe even 1,000 now that are 22 to 25. And I can tell you unequivocally, and so much of my audience is this age, I read all my DMs. I, like you, do the research, I read. When I tell you the amount of kids today that are scared to lose, because we taught them that losing was bad. It's so bad that we'll give you a trophy even though your team lost 14-1 in this game. And you'll appreciate this. I think this will make sense to you. All of this was well intended. It wasn't like all these parents came out 30 years ago and said, let's create soft kids that are zoo animals that can't live in the wild and are gonna have really tough lives because they don't have a backbone or they can't deal with adversity or they don't have the stomach for, pressure. They just thought they were doing the right thing. The problem was it wasn't. To your point, you can do anything is true for about a nanosecond until you start trying. I can tell you right now that I see unlimited 6, 7, 8-year-old kids on sports fields all around New York City that immediately I can tell you that child is not capable of playing in the National Basketball Association. You know what I mean? And that's okay. And that's okay. Like when I walk through a classroom and see the art hanging that the kids made in 6th grade, I can save a lot of time right now. It is not true that any one of those kids can make art that will sell at Sotheby's in the future. That's great. You can try everything, but you can't be everything.
Yeah.
And when you fall in love with who you are versus who you wish you were, then it becomes game over. I, in 5th grade, wanted to play for the New York Jets. I, by 6th grade, realized I was more likely to buy the New York Jets than to play for them. That made me go into entrepreneurship, not professional sports. And by the way,
I love this story, by the way. I want to hear the story after you finish your point, but I want to hear the story about your mom and your sweater.
I thank you for that. I'm always happy to share the greatest human being of all time, my mom's story. To finish my story, this is very important, I think, for a lot of people. This is a big one, actually. I'm 48 years old. When I was getting D's and F's in school in the late 80s and early 90s, as you know, Megyn, and a lot of people listening right now, entrepreneurship wasn't cool. It wasn't a thing. Everything was about what's the best university you can get into, and then what's the best job you can get into. That was the status. That was the
Very
cool.
True.
That was the right. There was when I heard entrepreneur in my youth, that meant that you were like a loser and you made pretend that you worked.
Yeah, and when you heard about somebody dropping out of college to go pursue under, you're like, oh my God, loser. And so but I was willing to lean into who I was because that's where my happiness was. And then I got fortunate that the timing of the world went in my favor. And now I walk around the world and people want to take a picture with me. This is nothing I even thought in a million years. All I wanted to do was sell wine for my dad's wine store. Do you know what I mean? Like I just wanted to be a businessman. I didn't call it entrepreneur. I'm going to be a businessman when I grow up. That's just what I want for everybody. Don't worry what we think. Don't worry what I think or Megyn thinks or your friends think or your family thinks or the neighbors, and definitely not anonymous people on social media. Think about what you think. Think about what you think, because you're going to be 90 years old one day laying there. And if you have regret, I promise you that's going to taste a lot worse than people making fun of you because you want to open up a bike shop or you're quitting your corporate job to do landscaping. This judgment of others is destroying our happiness, and it must stop. As if anybody else's judgment has anything to actually do with your life. It's so true. Oh, I love what you said, and I love it. I've heard you say that you don't believe in regrets, and I think my audience knows the same. I don't really have many. I don't spend my time thinking about that kind of thing. I think it's a real mental block toward going forward and advancing your life, your well-being, your happiness. But anyway, one of the reasons you're like this and wound up a happy, seemingly well-adjusted man is mom. And that brings me to the Jets and your childhood experience. Can you just tell us that? I love this story.
Yeah, thank you. I'm gonna try to compose it here. Like, this is such a big deal. Like, it's, when I tell you that without a shadow of a doubt, it is uncomfortably clear to me that 89.6% of why I have happiness and contentness. And by the way, back to my professional success, I'm detached from my professional success, meaning I love my career. I love being good at it. I'm humbled by the admiration and opportunities of doing things like this it leads me to, but I don't think it defines who I am. Like, I don't think like I'm good or a good guy or a winner because I'm good at business. I think it's a skill I have that is now kind of revered a little bit more than it has. It's always been respected, but now it's cool, right? It's pop culture. And all of that is because of my mom. My mom was, back to what I just heard you say, I think you would love her parenting style. She was rainbow and sunshine. Like, I had nothing but joy around my household, except when I did things that were not right, which led to real accountability. I was grounded and punished 4 times a year like clockwork because I brought back a report card that looked like garbage, and that was unacceptable. And other than that, I was a pretty good kid, but if I ever did anything, like I would, first of all, let me go to a place that I think may resonate with you. I never even contemplated disrespecting my mom or dad.
Oh gosh, my mom, I mean, I did it because I was a bratty teenage girl, but man, oh man, my mom, Linda made me pay.
Yeah, and by the way, Tamara made my sister Liz pay for the same teenage girl thing. I never went through that phase, but on Real Talk, it was because I was worried. She was an old school, like, we don't play that around here. Like we're in an era now, look, I can wrap my head around why we stopped spanking our kids. Though, if I'm being unbelievably transparent, like I could get a couple glasses of wine in me and I can get into like a thoughtful of like, is there an angle there? But the fact that we don't even ground our kids anymore in modern parenting, are you kidding me? Yeah. All we're teaching people is that there's no consequences in life. Do you know why everyone's so interesting on Twitter? Because you can't punch them in the face when they say something to you. I grew up in Jersey in very blue collar, lower middle class neighborhoods. Let me tell you what happened when we would say something fresh to each other. Somebody might get punched in the face. Right? And so we live in a society now where there aren't ramifications, there aren't consequences. And I couldn't agree more with people understanding, like, actually, Megyn, you'll like this. Do you know why the book cover is purple? Because we become, and boy, oh boy, nobody understands this better than you in this audience. America's become unbelievably red and blue. Like, woo, we are really loving red and blue. When it comes to parenting, if you can be purple, then you win. To your point, and you said it earlier, I'm not talking about scolding your children. I'm not talking about what a lot of parents did to their children. Listen, I'm going to be vulnerable here. My grandmother, what she did to my father, and she was a Russian woman in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, 60s, 70s. This is no judgment. They grew up in people don't understand the USSR, Megyn. The USSR was like North Korea. You weren't allowed to leave. It was jail. It was I promise, for everyone that's listening here, which means you listen to a lot of politics and world news and care about this stuff, you have no clue what the USSR was from 1917 to 1991. It was bad. So I don't judge my grandma, but I'm very aware of what a human looks like when they don't get positive reinforcement, when they get negative, when they get that all the time. My father is one of those people. And it's a real challenge to have true self-esteem when you're parented in that negative of an environment. So I'm not saying to everybody to do that, but to parent in a delusional way where everything is great and you're the best and go fight your kids' fights. Megyn, do you know that parents go to school and try to argue with parents to give their kid a better grade? Do you know how crazy that is?
I know, it's absolutely nuts, and beyond. In corporate America too. I've told the story before, but we had a friend at a huge investment bank in New York City. We had dinner with he and his wife, and he was telling us that he actually received a phone call from a new hire at this major American bank from a new hire's mom complaining about her son's tough schedule. Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, to me, look, you know what's amazing? You know what's amazing about being born in the Soviet Union and living in America? You realize that people have options. My parents were granted jobs that they couldn't transfer from in their early 20s before we moved to America. When people come to my company, and we have listen, I believe in a happy culture in a way that you can't imagine, but not delusion, not entitlement. And when people are like, yo, this blows, this stinks, this sucks, I always, honestly, I take it pretty serious. I'm not ivory tower. I try to attack it. I try to have meaningful conversation. We go try to address it. But when somebody comes a second, third, fourth, fifth time and complains about things that don't matter, like, it's one of the most joyous things that in my career that I'm able to say is like, hey, unlike me, who was born in a communist country, and luckily I got out, and definitely unlike my parents and grandparents, you have options. You don't like this company? You know what I would have said to that mom? I said, Mom, first, and this is that, I'm gonna tell you exactly what I would have said. Not for this show, but real life. I would have said, first, Mom, I think it's very sweet that you're calling for your son in one part of me. The other part of me thinks that your son's in big trouble, because if you're fighting his fights and he's a grown-ass man, he's got a big problem. And here's the answer to your question. Yeah, and here's the answer to your question. He's more than welcome to do this schedule. We hired him for a reason. We think he's got talent. But if this schedule is too tough for him, he really needs to consider doing something else.
Yeah. That's what I always say. I always say on my team, you don't want to work weekends occasionally. You don't want to work a late night when news breaks. Go work at KeyBank. It's wonderful. You know exactly what the hours are. Go show up at 9, leave at 4, you're good. Do you owe back taxes? Pandemic relief is now over. Along with hiring thousands of new agents and field officers, the IRS has kicked off 2024 by sending over 5 million pay-up letters to those who have unfiled tax returns or balances owed. Don't waive your rights and speak with them on your own. Tax Network USA, a trusted tax relief firm, has saved over $1 billion in back taxes for their clients, and then they can help you secure the best deal possible. Whether you owe $10,000 or $10 million, they can help you. Whether it's business or personal taxes, even if you have the means to pay or if you're on a fixed income, they can help finally resolve your tax burdens once and for all. Call 1-800-245-6000 for a private, free consultation or visit tnusa.com/Megyn. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.